Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to walk through how to do three-point lighting within KeyShot. If we have time, I'll also show you how to do it with physical light. So I'm going to show you how to do it within the HDRI light environment, and then also using physical lights. So KeyShot lighting is kind of like a staple within product design lighting. Really simple way to get a well-lit object and to be able to pull out its highlights and do it quick, simple, and efficient. It involves 3 lights, and this is sometimes a basic starting point too that I use. I'll start with a 3-light key light, and then I'll add more as I need them. But what you have is your primary light, your number 1, which is your key light. And what that does is it is the most powerful light in there. It's the brightest one, and you use it to highlight that section that you want of your product. A fill light gives you exactly that. It fills in the other areas, but now it is at a lesser percentage because it's not meant to be fully lit evenly all the way around. In order to give you that kind of dramatic, you know, everybody has drawn out their cube or done the marker renderings of your cubes, you know, where you've got 1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights on the top for how you're going to shade it in. That's not really the best cube because it doesn't show the top view. Let's just draw that again here quickly. And each one of them is a different brightness. So you might use a cool gray marker number 9 for the dark side, you know, and a 1 to demonstrate the lightest side. So they're always set up to start with in this kind of orientation. Now, you can easily swap this. It all depends on what you're trying to highlight or what part of your model that you want to be the brightest. But the kind of standard start is that they are at 45-degree angles to the front center of the object. So 45, 45, or 90 degrees to each other, with the backlight coming in the back and doing exactly that. It gives a little bit of edge light to the object. Let me just pull up another fun little image. So you can kind of see it here in 3D perspective. So it's demonstrating and showing 45-degree angle to the camera or 90 degrees to each other to fill that in. And you can see here, this is the brightest one, casting the greatest shadow. And then they use the fill light to get some more of the detail around the edge. And what that also does is it gets rid of some of the harshness. You know, this isn't dramatic lighting. This isn't that, oh, 90% of it's black and 10% is lit and it looks very dramatic. This is a way to get a good, well-balanced light. You can kind of see here where they show the face. Pretend this is the product. You've got a harsher shadow here. Well, that fill light helps to soften that shadow up a little bit. Then what they do is they come in with a backlight, and it does exactly that. If we look at this face, there's no real lighting back here. It's all very dark. That backlight comes in and helps to define that back edge. So there was one other image. And there's a variety of YouTube videos that you can watch, and you can use different types of lights. It doesn't have to be a spotlight. It can be a variety of lights. You can kind of see here where they've got more light going on. You know, they're adding another one to the top. And that's all stuff that we can do. Because remember, what we're using is a virtual environment. We're creating our virtual studio. I have to find them, but I'm going to share with you guys. I have a whole setup of all different types of lights that you can literally drag and drop into your environment to render the things out and create a backdrop. So to start with, let me just pull up. Does that, everybody tracking with that? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a cube and we'll put it in here. I'm going to snap it to the ground so it grabs on the ground. And we're going to say that's good enough. Now, right now my studio environment, assume this is like a white backdrop, but I have lights in here. And that is the original HDRI light setup. So I don't want to use that. Now, maybe I want to use it. Maybe this looks good, but I want to start with the other. So I'm actually going to come in and I'm going to create a new one. Now, what's going on right now, the reason the cube changed, because the light studio is gray. I'm going to convert this. I'm going to go background, and I want it to be the lighting environment. I don't want to fake in a fake environment. I want it to be just that. So this room is basically a gray light, a gray room, no spots. So I want to, though, start with it, and I'm going to say, I'm going to make that black. So the color is going to be black. So assume that we've just created a dark environment. We put the box in the room, we've turned off all the lights. Actually, I want to do one thing first. I want to get my camera. I'm just going to set up my camera here quickly. I'm going to lock my camera so I can't move it around. And then we'll come back to our environment. And we'll make it black. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add a light. And we're going to add a spotlight. It's going to be plain and simple. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say add a pin. And what that is basically a circular spotlight placed on here. So I'm going to mimic what we had on before. So if I look at this box, picture this box as a cylinder that wraps around the entire room. If I go this way, I'm moving the light across. So here, the light is at the back. So right is the front, left is the back. And this basically rotates around that sphere. So I'm going to place it here. And I'm just going to leave it there. Now, with 3-point lighting, there's a bit of a math to it. If this is your fill light, or your key light, let's get the brightness up to 3. Or you know what, let's do 4. That makes it easier. So if we get that brightness up to 4, when you're doing 3-point lighting, each light has a different ratio. And the way that works is, let me see if this is going to give it to me. I want to find what my percentage of ratio is. It's not going to give it to me. So I want to say, if I recall correctly, if your first light is 100%, which would be your key light, your fill light should be 75% of that. There we go. This is what I'm looking for. So your key light is the brightest, always, when you're setting it up. And your fill light is going to be 50 to 75% of the key light. So the reason I did 4 is that now what I want to do is place in the fill light. Now, I'm not done with this yet, because normally what you do is, we talked about it being 45 degree angle to the box, or to the light. My apologies, to the camera, which is over here. Usually you have it slightly raised up above too, so that the lights are shining down onto the object, because we want to get some of this top lit up. We don't want to light it all the way from the bottom. We want to get some of the light up from the top. So you can see this face right now is the brightest. These two are almost identical in tone. That's not something you necessarily want, because you do want differentiation between the edges. That's where you get lightest light, darkest dark, so that you can see your edges more defined. Here, you can see how our edge is not very well defined. So the next we want to do is we're going to create, and we'll call this pin 1, and we'll call it key light. The next that we want to do is we're going to add in another light. So again, this is where you can kind of get used to like playing it and seeing where it goes. So obviously this is down on the bottom. This is up on the top. You know, now we're getting just 45 degrees there. So if the other one, we did the brightness was at 4, let's make this 3. That would be 75%. But you can see it's not necessarily giving us what we want. Let me just do that. You know, it's too even. So let's take this and drop it down to 50%. Oh, 50. So 50% should be 2, not 50. So there we're getting a little bit of a balance. Now, we're not seeing any shadows on the floor or anything, because the whole environment is still black. So we're just modeling up this box. Now, what we want next is to get that little back edge light. Now, it's hard to see because we have no radiuses on anything. In radiuses, or a knife edge does not reflect light. You know, if it's that fine, you're not seeing anything. So here's a little trick. We all talk about how important radiuses are. If you have a model and maybe you didn't put in all your radiuses because I bitched at you and you got mad and stopped listening to me, in KeyShot, I can come in, I'm going to select this object, I'm going to go to Properties, I'm going to scroll all the way down, and I'm going to tell it, add radiuses. Anywhere there is a minimum edge of whatever we define it by, 30 degrees, whatever. I could define 90 degrees because these are all 90. I'm going to tell it to put in a 1-inch radius. Obviously that's way too big. There we go. So I basically said add in a radius on this. You can now see that it looks considerably better, or reads considerably better with radiused edges. Keep in mind though, if you do this, it adds to your render time. It doesn't always give you perfect radiuses. I can't control it. I can't say, hey, this one I want 1/4 of an inch, this one I want 0.25. It's one radius across the board per part. If I had another cube in here, I could do something different. Now, we're going to come back to our environment. We're going to come back here, and we're going to go fill light. And what we're going to do is we're going to add our next light. No, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that. Hold on 1 second here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, I'm going to change my environment now, we'll make that white. And then I can look at it and say, ooh, this still feels a little too washed out. I can lighten the look of the whole thing. If I want to adjust my light here, and I want to try to get just a little bit of that backlighting in there. So you can kind of see that I've got my light set up in that 3-point shot. Now, it's still difficult because we're using HDRI editor, and you can't always get the perfect lighting for it, but it works fairly good. Now, if I come in and let's say I want to soften this up, I don't want it to be as bright as it is, so we'll increase the brightness of this. We're going to go to 6. But what I can also do is I can go to the fall off, and let's just turn off these other lights. And I can soften it up. We can make the radius bigger or smaller for the light. So you can kind of see here, we've done this. Now it's playing. Where do we want that shadow? If I turn on the fill light, you can see I lose that shadow. So it's a matter of coming in and saying, okay, well, let me adjust this a little bit. You know, let me tweak and play with it and see where I'm going to end up with. Questions? No questions? Okay. So here I'm doing the fall off, and you can kind of see oops, let's come here. If I come and do the fall off, it's hard to see, but it softens everything up. So there it's very harsh. There we're softening things up. Now, we can also come in and adjust the color because there is no such thing as a pure white light. All lights either have a little bit of a yellow tinge to them or a little bit of a blue tinge. You know, you see that spectrum on the back of light bulbs? Well, they've all got something. So that's how you can get warmth into your objects, by changing the light and getting a little bit of coloring into here. You know, so going with the blue, it's going to cool things down a little bit. You're going to get a little bit of a light shadow that's kind of got that blue look. It's going to give you an overall cooler feeling, you know, and going in there. Same as if we come in here and add the yellow, it's going to give us just a little bit of a warmer feeling to it. You know, so depending on what you want to do with your object. Now it's kind of hard. My pin light isn't really powerful enough, it doesn't look like, to get what I'm wanting to do. Might be just a tad. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. I'm not getting that edge lighting that I would want. And I'm wondering if it's because let me come in here. There we go. So it wasn't doing a very good job because the background is white and my material is not the greatest. But here, if I turn this on and off, let's go to HDRI settings. So you can kind of see here that we've got the different colors and the shapes. And you can kind of see just ever so slightly, but more so if I turn this on and off, you can see that edge light. Now, it would probably be different if the radiuses were larger. So there you can see you start getting that edge light a little bit more from there. Now, if I came back and changed the camera angle, you can see where that edge lighting is important because we've just lost it off of there. So we've kind of got the nondescript background now, or edge in the background. Okay, so if there's no questions about that, what I want to do is show you real lighting using the real lights. Let me just also keep in mind, if you get a setup that you like, you can save the scene. So by coming in here, you've created a new environment. You can call it what you want, you know, basic 3-point light. and then you can come in and save it to wherever you want to go. So if I come back in here and I go to my environments, here's a few 3-point light setups that I did in the past. And you can kind of see each tutorial. I've done it 4 times now. Each tutorial, they end up pretty damn close to each other because that's the theory. That's the setup. Okay. So let's come back. We'll go new environment. Now what we can do, oops, let's get back onto the lock camera. We can come back and go edit, and we can add lights. So this is a spotlight. Now, that's very different you can also come in and see that there's a whole bunch of 3D spotlights already created that you can grab that you might want to use in different ways. So you could grab one of these to start with, or you can grab one from scratch. So if we grab one from scratch, what it's going to look like, oops, edit, add light, and we're going to start with a spotlight. And you see what happens is it brings it in. You can, this is called the gimbal. I don't know why it's called a gimbal. But what I can do is if I click on here, here, and here, I can scale it by grabbing the boxes. I can rotate it along the various axes, and I can translate it. So for here, you can see as I move it up, it's now encompassing the light. So I'm going to come into my free camera though. So I can set it up like this. Now, keep in mind, one of the things is we want to set it up with 3 different positions. So this is where you kind of have to pop back and forth. We're going to go camera, and we're going to turn on orthographics, and we're just going to go camera top view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it over to here. And I'm actually going to go CV. Whoops, no, I'm not going to do CV. We're just going to go OK first. We're going to turn off this. Come on. We'll call it fill. And let's actually, instead of the box, let's grab something a little bit more dynamic. Okay. So what we want to do oops, we want this to be, sorry, hold on one second. Oh wait, why is it doing that? Gotta go to our top view. So I'm going to grab this one, place it at approximately the 45. Get that at the 45. We're going to come and rotate it. It can be somewhat tricky. So what I'm doing here, this blue line extends the distance of the spotlight. This is the same as before. It adjusts the fallout. So if I want to make it just more of a point light or a greater spread. And then we can adjust it that way. We can then go to the next one. And once we grab, if we grab this light here that we just had, we can scale it up and down at the back end. That's not where I want to go. Hold on a second here while I grab. There we go. So if I double click on the light, it gives me all of our control options. So very much like what we had with the other objects, I can even change it to a different light type in that position. For all intents and purposes, we'll leave it at the spotlight. But I can change the radiuses, the fall off, the intensity, we can adjust the beam angles. I don't know why it's got both of them selected. That's not what I wanted. So you can either drag them through the bars in here, or you can drag them via these objects in here. So if we come back to our scene, we can then move this one. Now, you can add textures to the light, which will give it, if you want to have like a camouflage light or something like that. Let's come back to the scene. We're going to select on there, we're going to go position, and we're going to move it. We'll move it up high. We'll adjust this here. Whoa, that's not what I wanted. Control Z works perfect. We'll go camera top view. So that we can come in. Oh, no, I used the wrong one. And you can kind of see as it goes across and how it highlights, it brightens things up or it softens things up. So if I come back in here, for some reason, I have managed to link them. I'm not sure how I did that. I will have to look into that later. But that doesn't prevent me from doing what we want. Now, very, very similar to creating the environments for there. Now, I can also come back and I can open this up so I can use this in context with that. I can come back and go back to the very original environment and use that in context as well. So you can use, and usually that is usually how it's done to get the best, most realistic lighting effects, is that you're utilizing the HDRI environment image. Unless you already have your object in a fully defined environment, you're adding some additional lighting to the scene, and then you're also adding various real lights. Now, these lights, from my understanding, it takes longer to render when you use these things because it gives it a more realistic, I don't want to say algorithm, but the lights act differently and they act more realistic and they have more realism to them. I'm not saying that very clear, but most people that you see that have these beautiful rendering light setups and that, you'll see that they use a variety of lights to create the different things. So, but you can see moving them around takes a little bit of practice. One thing I want to figure out, multiple. When I used to do my renderings in Alias, what I would do is I would have it set up in 4 quadrants, so I could have this divided into 4, and I would have a top view, a side view, and a front view, and then a perspective view. So I would move my cameras and my spotlights in these 3 windows, but I'm not sure if you can do that in here. I've never seen that. And the fact that I'm typing it in and it's not showing me anything even coming close tells me that you can't do it. Because I found, basically, if you're going to do it, what I suggest is creating your shortcuts or simplifying the shortcuts. Control Alt 1, 2, 3 is a little bit much. I would just go 1, 2, 3, 4 so that you could quickly adjust through each one. So that you can come in and go, well, front view, and then adjust them. Top view, adjust them. Right view, adjust them. If you're doing that a lot. This is getting a little bit more advanced, but you can get nicer looking renderings, that is for sure. Another time we'll go more over the different types of lights that you can have and what you would use them for. Questions?